Hi, everybody. My name is Immaculate, and I am fascinated by the minds of entrepreneurs, pace setters, innovators. And I'm always honored when I have a guest on my podcast who I respect. And it's always an honor when somebody says yes to talking to a nobody like me. So I have with me on the call today Tendai. He has been in rooms that would make many of us cower, and he is right now a brand strategist. I think a David Langton, correct?
Yeah, that's
And
correct.
he has a wealth of information, a wealth of knowledge that I think I want to just tap into, and I think many of us would benefit from his time for free today. Hi, Tendai.
Hi, Immaculate. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? How's the work today?
Yeah, work is working. I'll put it like that. Some days are better than others, but we keep pushing.
We keep pushing. Exact. That's just
Yeah.
a perfect place to start because you're a man of faith, and I find every time you speak, you don't sound negative. You always have a positive outlook on life. Talk to me about your faith and your family. How has your faith helped you become who you are today, the Tendai Luwo that we see today?
Um, yeah. So I think I'm not always positive. I think perhaps when I record the videos, a lot of them are notes to myself, right? It's stuff that I create so that at some point I can go back and watch and remind myself during the
Mm-hmm.
tough days to be like, hey, mwari akunyadzisi. But
True.
I think the journey started, when I was quite young. I grew up in the church. I always used to go to church with my grandmother and my mother. There was a small
Mm-hmm.
church in North End called St. Margaret's, and it's
Mm-hmm.
an Anglican church, and that's where I was pretty much from the day I was born till about 12. And yeah, I've just always been in the church. Obviously, at some point when you become a teenager, you become a little bit more rebellious, and perhaps in my 20s, I could have done a little bit better on the spiritual front, right? But
Yeah.
ultimately raised in the church, and really happy that my family set that foundation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, how has you've been in rooms where people may not necessarily share your faith, and yet you were quite, I would say, for lack of a better word, loud about your faith. You're open about your faith. So, how do you navigate your being a man of faith and being in rooms or having a client or boss or whosoever it may be on the other end who might not necessarily share your faith or your perspective?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. For a long time, it was a battle, right? It was sort of one of those
Mm-hmm.
things where you're like, okay, do I keep this to myself? Do I sort of hide it?
Yeah.
Um, but to be quite frank, in let's call it these conversations with the Holy Spirit, I kept
Mm.
getting that nudge to be like, look, um, the part of why I'm putting you in these rooms, part of why I'm elevating you is to do my work, right? Is to show
Yes.
grace, mercy, is to show just how impactful things can be, and also just to bring a little bit more confidence to men to say, hey, there's no shame in being, you know, a man of the faith, and boldly
Mm-hmm.
proclaiming
Mm-hmm.
the glory and the greatness of God. So
Mm-hmm.
I won't say it came naturally. I think it took a bit of coaxing to
It
get
always
there.
does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So talk to me about being a brand strategist. What is that? Before I go deeper, what exactly do you do?
I love that one, right? So essentially, a brand strategist, your key role is to help organizations find their core audience, right? To ensure
Mm-hmm.
that, companies, businesses of all shapes and sizes are speaking to the right people, because once you speak to the right people, you get far better results than trying to spray and pray, so to speak. So if I was to put it in a nutshell, my job is to help companies find the right audience and speak to them in a way that resonates and positively impacts that business.
So you're sort of like a step before ads, before we go into our advertisement and All right, that's really
Yeah.
cool. But you've you've been in the media
Yes.
in most of your career, or in all of it rather. How did your experience in the media, how did your experience with people bring you to knowing how to handle brands, how to make brands visible?
Yeah. So my story actually started before that. Believe it or not, I took the typical route that an African child born in Zimbabwe would take, and I went to school to study law, right? Because
Oh, wow.
you quickly learn that in African households, you're either an accountant, a doctor, a lawyer, or a disappointment. So I picked law. My aunt, my mom's younger sister, is a legal practitioner. She's a high
Okay.
court judge. So I've grown up around career professionals. But when I got
Mm-hmm.
to university to study law, there was an advert at the canteen for the campus radio station. So I went
Okay.
for that interview. And at the time, I didn't know I had this voice, right? So I was just
Mm-hmm.
like, "Oh, I'm trying my luck," and they're like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh no, we absolutely love you. We think you should be on radio. We're going to teach you how to be a radio presenter." So that's where the bug bit.
Oh, wow.
Unfortunately, it came at the cost of the law degree, so I switched over to journalism, and that's essentially where it started, right? So I started on campus radio. From there, I then tried to get onto commercial radio. It didn't work out, but God's timing. But I then
Mm-hmm.
became a music journalist. So
No.
my actual corporate journey started off writing about music artists, right? I used to interview quite a lot of these artists here and there. That then caught the attention of Viacom Africa, where they were like, oh, okay, we like your writing. And it was at a time where they were trying to elevate their own digital presence.
Okay.
So I went from writing for print to creating content for digital, and then
Oh.
that then just snowballed into more and more opportunities in the broadcast space. But at a certain
Mm-hmm.
point, I then realized that I felt I could do a little bit more, and I wanted to go out on my own, and that sort of then birthed this journey of moving more into the strategic consulting side of
Okay.
things.
Okay. All right. So when it comes to when you were writing and creating digital content for these big companies, what, how did you manage to balance flexing your creative mind and meeting company demands? Because sometimes they don't always, come together. You have to find a way to sort of please the uppers and also be creative at the same time.
Yeah, I think that was a struggle, particularly when you're younger. You don't have the same soft skills to navigate those type of dynamics. What I then had to find, I had a really great mentor at the time who just helped me think from the perspective of the C-suite, helped me think from the perspective of the leadership, right? So he was like, look, yeah, your story might be great creatively, but what does it do for the bottom line? How does this impact the bottom line? Can you articulate that? Can you show how this attention equates to some sort of commercial value? So
Mm-hmm.
essentially how I solved that issue was learning how to speak the language of the boardroom, even though I was
Mm-hmm.
still quite a junior resource. And that then helped
Mm-hmm.
me win a little bit more favor and the ability for them to sign off on a lot more creative ideas.
Okay. And now the tables have flipped a little bit. Now you're the boardroom and you're speaking to, somebody who was you 10, 20 years ago. How do you help somebody, or what have you learned that makes you a better person than the other members of the C-suite that you had come across years back?
I think having a teachable spirit is probably the number one trait that I'd recommend anyone to have, regardless
Mm,
of whether you're junior, mid, or senior, right? Always being open to feedback, understanding that a lot of feedback you get is not criticism, or criticism is not a personal thing. A lot of times it's actually someone wanting to help you get better. So I'd say a teachable spirit. I'd say unwavering and unending curiosity, right?
mm,
Understanding that there's so much you can learn from so many different places. One of my
mm,
favorite things to do, I used to read a lot of like business books, but now I've
mm-hmm.
pivoted towards autobiographies because it
Okay.
sort of shows you how someone navigated things beyond the theory, right? So,
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
if you remain curious and you allow yourself to keep learning, I think that above all else counts for so much. And then you pair that with a high work ethic, I think you'll go quite far.
Okay, so with your career right now, you do consulting, but you also decided that you want to go bullish on social media for yourself. What made you take that decision that you really, I mean, besides the fact that everybody's on social media, it's just the way to go. But what made you really decide, look, this is how I want to do it and this is the way I want to do it? Because you could have decided to show more of your personal life, but you've managed to show yourself and still be professional about it, which I think is a balance that many of us don't know how to strike. So how do you manage it, and what made you make that decision?
Okay, so I've never told this story, and I wasn't sure if I'd ever share it.
Oh
So
yay, we love
you've
stories.
you've pulled an exclusive out of me. So what had happened is there was a time where, we had a couple of really great clients, but our biggest struggle was we were never getting paid on time. I think in that
Oh,
particular season, the one client hadn't paid for 4 or 5 months.
yeah.
And this is a client who they were making millions of US dollars, right, every single month.
Mm-hmm.
They were, very close to, like, let's say $100 million per annum type of company. And so I
Okay, yeah.
sat and I said, okay, why aren't they paying us? It's not like we're not delivering. It's not like, they're not happy with the work. And I realized it's probably a perception thing. Because I said
Oh
to
yeah.
myself, I said, okay, if I was Vusi Tembegwayo, would I have these payment problems? And I
Absolutely not.
realized probably not, right? Because there would be
Yeah.
some sort of respect
Yeah.
afforded to me if I held that same level of status. And so in
Yeah.
trying to solve it, I then decided, okay, well, then maybe let me put myself out there, because unfortunately, the way humans typically work is, we do sometimes treat people based on how we perceive them and whatever level of value we associate with
Mm-hmm.
that person. And so I said, okay,
Mm-hmm.
fine, maybe the best way for me to build my own value is to elevate, my visibility. In
Yeah.
terms of how I then balance that across my personal life and, just finding that sweet spot, it's been a learning curve. One of the best
Okay.
things that I came across was that you need to create at least 100 pieces of content, because through that, you sort of start to see, oh, what works, what doesn't work. So a lot of my early posts didn't work. A lot of my early content, some of it has since been deleted. Um, but it was awkward. It was weird. I didn't know how to talk to the camera. I was putting on
Yeah.
a voice. It was just a whole mess. But eventually, after probably 60, 70 pieces of content, I was like, oh, okay, now I understand. And then you then
Yeah.
start running with what works. In terms of my personal life, that one is still something I'm learning as I go, in terms of how much do I want to share, how much do I not want to share. Do I want
Mm-hmm.
to, include my kids, because they're a big part of my life? Do I
Mm-hmm.
want my spouse to be, she's a career professional. So
Mm-hmm.
some of the things I haven't figured out, and I'm still going through it. But
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, my guiding force is I want to be a lighthouse, right? To just share what
Absolutely.
I know, what I've learned over the past few years,
Yeah.
and basically be of service to others. That's my ultimate
Mm-hmm.
mission.
Mm-hmm. I like that. You just touched on something that I think affects so many entrepreneurs, business people, especially in Zimbabwe, where you're working, you're delivering, your client is not coming back with, your payment. And I agree that it's largely a perception thing, but would you speak to some of those people who are encountering that? Because I think it's very prevalent for our in our market, where we, a lot of people struggle with the, chasing down a client and
Yeah.
still maintaining a good relationship with that client and still getting your money back. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think I think that's an ongoing challenge for businesses all over the world, right? Whether you're in
Mm,
Zimbabwe, Kenya, Nigeria, South Africa, America, wherever you might be, so many people
mm,
face that. I think some of the things we learned to do, first and foremost, was not be afraid to say no to your terms and conditions. So if you say, hey, these are my deposit terms or these are my payment terms, if you haven't
mm-hmm,
paid this by that date, then you've lost your slot or I'm not going to work with you. It's scary because a lot
mm-hmm.
of times you need the money,
Yep.
but if you can have the confidence to say no and draw a line in the sand, that's one of the things that works. A second thing that I found that works really well is also increasing your prices, right? So
Mm-hmm.
ultimately getting to a point where if you need $100 to survive, you are then
Yep.
going to charge 250 because that,
Okay.
60% deposit still covers you without stressing you out, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, I think a lot of times we are scared to charge what we should be charging. So raise
Mm-hmm.
those prices and also understand that most times when someone reaches out to you, they need you, right? Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
we don't understand where the power really lies, that you are the expert
Yes.
in that field. You are providing a
Mm,
service. I've reached out because I need what you do. So you
mm-hmm.
have a lot more power than you realize, whether you're a small business, self-employed, or growing.
Yep. Yeah. So I wanted to just go back a little bit and talk to somebody who's a creative, considering you started, with writing, with media. Um, what professional lines, or how do some of us get it wrong in the media in terms of professionalism? What have you learned that you can just help us in terms of just our professionalism, just bringing our standards up just a touch more, making it, a little bit more international?
I'm going to ask you to perhaps, if you could add maybe a little bit more context, right? So are we talking about
Okay.
content creators? Are we talking about photographers? What type of
Okay.
creative are we speaking about in this context?
Well, I mean, any creator, but in the sense that sometimes you're a creative and you're the business. So how do we miss a lot of business in the way we, um like the way we present ourselves, the way we speak, the way we handle our business? Because I think sometimes the creative business, we fail to meet a professional standard. I don't know
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yes.
Have I shed more light? Yeah.
Yes, I get it. Yeah. So I think
Mm,
firstly, the reason why that tends to happen is a lot of times technical competency doesn't translate into entrepreneurial, you know, talent or abilities, right? So
yeah.
and this doesn't just happen in the creative space. So I can give you an example. Maybe you were a really good financial director in a company, or you're a really good bookkeeper in an organization. And then you say, you know what?
Hmm.
I'm going to start an accounting firm, right? I'm tired of getting, $100 a month. I know if I start my own firm, I could probably bill,
Hmm.
$2,000 a month. Fair and
Hmm.
fine. What you then miss is that the skills you had as an employee don't translate into the skills you need to run the
Yeah.
business. So that's
Yeah.
usually what the cause is. In terms of how you fix it, I'm of the belief that one of the best things you can do is firstly work on systems and processes, right? So start
Okay.
documenting your process as early as possible, because the sooner you document what's in your mind, the easier it is to start transferring the execution over to someone else so that you can work on the
Mm,
business and not in it, right? So that's one of the
mm,
big things that I see happening. Secondly, I'd like to reference runners, right? So if you look at someone like Eliud Kipchoge, the Kenyan marathon runner,
mm-hmm.
one of the things
Yeah.
they do is they have pace setters, right? So they have someone in front who's sort
Yeah.
of guiding them to like, okay, this is how fast you need to run. The same thing applies to
Mm-hmm.
business, that oftentimes when you start, you haven't found a pace setter. You haven't found Mr. X, Mrs. Y, Dr.
Mm-hmm.
whoever to say, hey, you are further down the road. You know this thing. can I follow
Mm-hmm.
you, right? Can you lead the
Yes.
way so that I keep up with your pace? One, it's going to show you how hard to work. Two, it's going to show you basic things like how to interact with clients, how to cost, how to fix things, how to manage your employees and stuff. I think it's just that
Mm-hmm.
understanding that you're not going to know everything. And the best way to learn those things is to put yourself behind someone who's running a little bit faster than you. Everyone you know who's
Mm-hmm.
done well has some sort of mentor or hero. Mentor is someone you interact
Yeah.
with, they hold you accountable. Hero is someone you follow online, you've read their books, you know their history, but they might not know you personally, but they both serve the same
Mm-hmm.
purpose.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's amazing. I agree with that, and I think we can learn a lot from people who are wiser than us, which is one thing I I try to do with my podcast. Is I want to learn from people who've done better than me, and I want to know what have you overcome, because I think it's so easy for us looking and we see successful people and we think, little me, like, can I do that? Can I get there? And yet sometimes you people have like lived through things we could never even imagine. So I just wanted to touch on that as far as you're comfortable.
Yeah.
What failures, what have you had to overcome in your life, or mentalities have you had to overcome to get to where you are?
I think the main things that I've probably had to overcome is one, my relationship with money, two,
Mm-hmm.
self-confidence,
Mm-hmm.
and three, mental health, but not mental health in the way you'd think, right? So I'll start with the
Okay.
relationship with money, in that I just didn't know how to manage money, right? I just didn't understand the dynamics of money for a host of
Yes, a lot of us.
reasons,
Yeah.
right? I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of us are first or second generation. I wouldn't even call it wealth, right? But we're still early in this journey of making
Yeah.
money. So I
Yeah.
had to do quite a lot of work just to unlearn the bad habits and learn new
Mm.
habits. Um, the second one is self-confidence, right? That sometimes you don't have the self-confidence, right? There's the whole halo effect that if you articulate well, then you look presentable. There's the assumption that, oh, you have it all together, right? But that's
Yes.
not
Yes.
true. And I think for a
Mm-hmm.
long time, I had to build my self-confidence up.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
and the last one is mental health. I've done quite a bit of work, just seeing therapists, seeing psychologists, just to understand, how does my brain work? Why does it work the way it works? Why do I struggle with some
Mm-hmm.
things? Why do I not struggle with other things?
Yeah.
I'm a big advocate for adult men getting checked out for ADHD. I think that's
Oh
something
wow.
that often goes untreated and unidentified in a lot of particularly Black people, men and
Mm-hmm.
women, and that's
Mm-hmm.
something I'm a big advocate for, people getting checked out. So those are predominantly the main things that I've had to overcome, and I'm still learning and navigating.
I want to talk about especially mental health because in men, because it's especially in our culture, it's brushed off. We don't even I don't even know if it registers on the Richter scale of what we we do. How do you talk to men, or how do you advise men, or when you sit down with another gentleman, how do you talk to him and be like, "Cha, zvakakoshezi," because
Yeah.
I think even the mental block to even talk about it, mental health, is so prevalent. How do you talk to men about it?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's a never ending journey. I don't know if if you get to a point where, like, I'm okay, right? I think you learn to navigate it, you learn to manage it
Mm-hmm.
better. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if it ever goes away, right? But I think one of
Mm-hmm.
the best things I learned was, you need a toolbox, because you
Yeah.
understand that different scenarios call for different things. And again, it's not just a
Yeah.
man thing. I think it's just a people thing. So
Yeah.
I've found, at the, my most versatile tool, so to speak, is the word, right? That
Mm-hmm.
come
Mm-hmm.
what may, at least every morning, I'm going to try and listen to Miles Monroe. I'm going to try and read my Bible. I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to try and listen.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes all of that doesn't work, and all I can do is just listen to praise and worship, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes that's it. That's the best we can do
Yeah.
on this day, right? So I find that to be my most versatile tool. And then the next one is then having a community, right? And a
Mm.
very diverse community, in the sense that you want people older than you want people younger than you want people doing better than
Okay.
you want people from
Yeah.
maybe more even humble backgrounds, right? I was fortunate enough to meet Ndate David Sejobe, who was the security
Okay.
guard at MultiChoice. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't think people realized just how incredible he was just as a human being. And there
Mm.
were days where interacting with him was my therapy, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So that
Mm-hmm.
would be part of a tool, right? A community and conversation. And then the last one is
Mm-hmm.
professional help. I think I'm a beneficiary of seeking professional help just to
Yep.
navigate various things. And
Yep.
it's certainly scary before you go that route, but once you do it, you realize just how important it is. So I'd say, have your faith, have your community, and have your professionals. I think those are the three main ways I would navigate mental health.
So I just want to dig into that a little bit more for you personally, because talking about how we balance the professional side, how do you balance your professional life with your family life? Because your family also need their time, your children need their time, your spouse needs her time, and you need your personal time. How do you balance that with being very heavily professionally needed when you are needed? How do you balance the two? Your professional life, your family life.
I might change my mind and opinion on this one day, but I don't believe in balance. I think there's
Okay.
seasons and trade-offs, right? So
Okay.
I'm currently in a season of growth, which means my family time is slightly more reduced, right? But it's in the pursuit of
Okay.
something greater. This doesn't mean that I don't see
Mm-hmm.
my kids. I mean, I'm fortunate enough that my life is structured in a way where, I always say, so my day starts at 4 a.m., get
Mm-hmm.
ready, prep, work. But around about, 2, 3 p.m., that's when I then pick my kids up from school. And then
Mm-hmm.
I get to spend the afternoon with them. But by the time they go to sleep,
Mm-hmm.
then that's either time for my
You're
spouse or
working.
time to then create content or whatever. Would I
Yeah.
like to spend more time with them? Would I like to have days where I'm not stressed out? 100%. But I
Mm-hmm.
understand that it's a game of balance, right? It's a game of trade-offs. Right now, you sort of
Mm-hmm.
sacrifice that, okay, maybe the next 2 years, we need to work a
Mm-hmm.
little bit more. But the benefit is it will hopefully put us in a place where we can then spend even more time. So
Yeah.
yeah, essentially, I don't necessarily think there's balance in the way it's not a 50-50. I think
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
sometimes it's 70-30, 60-40, 90-10 even. That's my perspective, but maybe it'll change one day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And with your family, you say you're a golf dad and you're
Yeah.
helping your son become a 2037 golf masters. How is that going? And what have you found about why did you pick golf specifically for your children?
Yeah, so I actually didn't pick golf for my son. Golf picked him. It
Okay.
was during COVID and there weren't a lot of sports you could play. So he'd come with me to the driving range and one of the pros
Mm-hmm.
saw him and said, hey, I think this kid is naturally talented. Can we mentor him? So
Mm-hmm.
throughout his journey, it's actually been other professionals that
Oh.
have sort of guided him. I quickly accepted that I don't have the skill set to help the gifts that he has, apart from being the
Mm-hmm.
financier of this journey. Um, but yeah, I think yeah. So in terms of his golf journey, it's really just been supporting him. He's got this big lofty dream to get to the Masters, which is the pinnacle of golf. And
Mm-hmm.
I've then just committed to guiding him the best I can. There's something else
Mm-hmm.
that you had asked within the context of that question. If you could repeat that part for me.
Oh, I just wanted to know how that's going for you, becoming helping him, or what do you do to help
Yeah.
him? I think you just said you pretty much finance and support.
Yes. Yeah. That's it. I'm the wallet behind the journey.
We all need wallets behind. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's amazing, and one of the reasons why I was so fascinated and wanted to speak to you is the fact that you're a father and you are a professional, and sometimes we don't have those positive, clear, because we know someone might be a professional and a father, but sometimes it's not very clear or very open about how they handle their family life and their professional life. So it's something that I did want to speak to you about, and I appreciate that you're willing to be open about it. And I just wanted to also know where what's your dream? I mean, right now I know you're David Langton, but
Yeah.
men like you tend to have dreams further. So, what's the future for Tendai Luwo?
The future for Tendai Luwo is to become the most impactful voice on business, life, and faith in the
Mm.
continent and, God willing, the world. That's the dream.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. And one more question I wanted to ask: considering you're a Zimbabwean in South Africa and you've been there for years, how do you navigate the some of the finer lines, with I don't want to say xenophobia, but some of the tribal relationships we have between Zimbabwe and South Africa? How do you navigate them? Or do they affect your life, or do you ever come across those instances?
Do I come across the instances? No, I would be lying if I said that's my reality. However, I think it's a
Mm-hmm.
function of understanding a very basic principle, right? So if you read
Mm-hmm.
someone like Thomas Sowell, he speaks about how some of
Mm-hmm.
these tensions are not unique to a singular country. They happen all over the world.
True.
And one of the primary
True.
things you understand is that when you fail to assimilate, right? So if you enter a new country, wherever you may go, if you fail to
Mm-hmm.
assimilate, you it
Constantly
becomes
stick out like a
you
sore
stick
thumb.
out. Yeah, you stick
Yeah.
out, right? So
Mm-hmm.
one of the things my parents were quite big on is understanding that you are a guest, you are a visitor. Learn the
Absolutely.
ways and the languages of the people. So ek
Yeah.
is praat Afrikaans, ke a teta, ke a bua, I'm learning
Yeah.
Venda. You sort of understand that
Okay.
no, you need to. If we were to go to France, right, I'd have to learn French.
Yes.
If we were to go to Italy, I'd
Yes.
have to
Yes.
learn Italian.
Yes.
So
Mm-hmm.
I think those are some of the things that can mitigate some of the tensions.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully more and more people also understand the importance and the value of just assimilation above all else. It's one of the
Yeah.
most
Yeah.
powerful tools you can do to quell the tension, so to speak,
Yeah.
and make life
Yeah.
easier for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. I think it's powerful. We always have to ingratiate ourselves wherever we find ourselves.
Yeah.
It is an underestimated tool. Yeah. I don't want to keep you for too long. I do want to thank you. It's been such an honor. I constantly say this, but it's something I do find whenever I meet people where I just cold email you and it's a positive response. I don't know. You had no reason to say yes. So I'm very grateful for your time. And finally, I just wanted to give you a bit of time to talk about, I don't know, what you're getting into, what you're interested in, anything that you'd want people to follow, or anything you feel like you want people to know.
Yeah. Firstly, thank you for your time. I checked out your channel, and I love the work you're doing, and I love the people you're speaking to. So the pleasure is all
Thank
mine. The
you.
honor is all mine to be on your platform. In terms of what we're doing at the moment in David and Langton, we just launched a assessment tool for business leaders. It's called the Brand Maturity Index. It's a free tool that
Okay.
allows organizations to check basically how they're doing, how durable is their brand actively servicing their business? Because a lot of companies think they're marketing, but they're actually not, right? They're busy, but it's not, it's actually not doing anything for the business. So that's the main thing that we've been
Okay.
pushing at the moment. Just
Mm-hmm.
helping people understand in their own time whether what they're doing is actually working. And then on the personal front is
Mm-hmm.
just continuing to do a lot more of this content creation, meeting other creators, meeting other great minds, and just getting more of this message out there that anyone can build, a business and a life that is impossible to ignore.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Tendai Luwo, I really, really appreciate your time. People like you help my brand grow because I can't do it alone. But yeah, I do appreciate, and I do hope to meet you in person. I'm grateful virtually meeting you, but I hope
Yeah.
one day when I'm down south or you're back home, I could meet you and just have another chat. But definitely I'll be knocking on your door again.
Okay.
I'll be knocking on your door, maybe from a client perspective and saying, hey, I need this to improve. How do I do it?
No, once again, always an honor to be a part of great productions like this. And I'm a Bulawayo boy, so I don't know if you're in
Okay.
Bulawayo or Harare. I assume you're in Harare.
I'm in Harare, but it's interesting because my surname is Nyamazana. So people always
Okay.
think I'm from Buluwayo, and I'm like, no, it's just someone down. I think I had a grandmother, great, 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 whatever, down the line who was Ndebele, and she brought in that name. So every time I meet someone, they're like, Siakuluma, and I'm like, ugh.
Okay, well,
Yeah,
yeah.
but
When I'm in Harare, I'll definitely give you a shout.
no problem. All right, Tendai. That's it. We're signing out. Thank you
Awesome.
again.